Have you ever been knocked down and found it hard to get up? Have you ever been knocked down and bounced back to come back even stronger? Hi, I'm Gaurav Bhagat and you can call me GB, and welcome to the Smashed Bashed Yet Not Dashed podcast. A fortnightly podcast where I speak about persistence, perseverance and overcoming the odds to come out ahead. Welcome back to the Smashed Bashed Yet Not Dashed podcast. I have the pleasure of introducing yet another superstar today, author, scriptwriter, columnist, YouTuber, and someone who has so many other feathers in her cap. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the very talented Advaita Kala. Advaita, great to have you on the Smashed Bashed Yet Not Bashed podcast.
Thanks, Gaurav. It's a pleasure to be here. We've been trying to do this for a bit, and I'm glad that we finally, got our diaries on the same page. So it's lovely to be here.
True that. We have indeed been trying to schedule this for a very, very long time. And boy, do you keep yourself very, very busy as well. So what's been happening with you in recent times? I mean, it has been a while since we actually caught up. So let's hear what's been happening with you.
With COVID, things have been, strange for most of us. Not so much for me because, as you know, I'm a writer. So I write films and fiction and columns and all of that. So life for me has been pretty normal. In fact, I quite enjoy having COVID as an excuse not to go out because I love to be home. I'm a homebody. And I have now a legitimate excuse to not be out without seeming weird. So that's what I've been doing. I've been home mostly, unless, you have to get out for certain things. But for me, life hasn't changed that much. What it has done in the last year or so is that I've started YouTubing, like you said in your introduction. And I think it's a great way to connect with people and to like-minded people and to discuss things that you find interesting without having to increase your carbon footprint.
Agree. And just in case you're all wondering, where do I know Advaita from? Well, we actually go back 27 years. When she left Wellams and I left Sana, and we both found ourselves in the same school in the 11th grade, DPS Mathura Road in New Delhi. And I never thought I'd go to DPS, by the way. When I was younger, I remember going over the Oberoi flyover and laughing, at DPS. And lo and behold, one day we both ended up at that particular school.
Yeah. And I have to say, those 2 years, I didn't quite expect them to be as transformative as they were. And you're right. We the first time we met, we were like, what the hell are we doing here? And slowly, it sucked us in. And I think we made some of our closest friends times, quite honestly, lifelong friends. Take you, for example, me and Nikhil and Vishesh. We're still in touch after all these years.
And yes, we did make some good friends there. Nikhil, Vishesh, Aman, Devika, to name a few. So yes, we had some good times. Let's hear about some of your fond memories from those times, those days.
Gaurav, I have the worst memory. I've realized this with the passage of time. I have the absolute worst memory. I don't remember anything, which is great because I don't hold grudges. There's the unpleasant things. With me, because I have such a bad memory, I tend to remember not much. And usually, it's usually pleasant. The one thing I do remember is that picnic we all went for. And Nikhil put his arm around the cop when we were pulled over because obviously we were underage and driving rashly and all of those horrible things that young people do. And I've never been so scared in my life because the cop said, I'm going to throw you in jail. And Nikhil always thought that he was quite urbane and sophisticated and the man of the world. And we were like the school kids, right? And he'd also, hadn't he repeated the year? So, yeah. So he was like a year older as well. And, it was just so scary because the cop was ready to haul all of us off to jail because of him. And I don't know, how did we get out of that? I can't recall.
Again, probably somebody called somebody and And that's really how it works in Delhi most of the time, right? Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. So that's probably how we got ourselves out of that mess.
Mhm. And then the other significant was when we went swimming at the, was it the New Friends pool? Yeah, it was a New Friends Club pool. Yeah, we all went swimming. And I remember that was the day I got to know about my scholarship to the US. So that like really stands out in my mind as a very special day.
And yes, we did have some great times, and it has been a while.
Well, I mean, those were school times, and then we of course had the 20s as well. I remember coming back from college in the US, and you always had time to go for a matinee show of a film, and I couldn't quite understand it because you were hardly going to college, were you? Or you don't want me to say that?
So college didn't happen for us, and I think that was the best part about Bhagat Singh, that for all of us who went there, college didn't ever hold too much for us.
And then we used to go to even that place, Fireball, on 32nd Milestone, remember? And I live in Gurgaon now, but at that time, it seemed like we were driving into the boonies, It was so far out.
Yeah, and today that's the heart of Gurgaon, so to speak.
I mean, it's incredible, really, how the city has changed, how so many things have changed.
True that. So yes, fond memories. And speaking of stories, you've written some amazing books, Almost Single being one of them, and also movie scripts for Anjana Anjani and Kahani in 2010 and 2012. For the latter, you even won some awards. So, to our viewers, I think they'd really be interested, and listeners both would really be interested in the importance of storytelling and how this skill can really help individuals in their personal capacity to do more. So, let's hear about storytelling and its importance.
Sure. I mean, I've always enjoyed reading, and I always say I'm like a closet introvert in that sense, because I come across as like social and all of those things, and I am those things as well, but obviously with people I know very well, not in general. And so reading was a refuge for me for a long time, and so was writing. But writing was, of course, something that was more private, and it wasn't really something you could earn a living from. And I didn't actually anticipate receiving the kind of success that my work did in the public domain. And it was always on the side. And going out and publishing my first novel was essentially, I have nothing to gain, nothing to lose sort of situation. And I was at a job, and this is what I tell young writers who come to me for advice all the time, that, keep your day job, like don't quit. A starving artist or a starving writer is very romantic in a film or on the pages of a book, but actually living that life can be awful. So, I always say, keep your day job and then write. And for me, I think Almost Single, the success it enjoyed, it got published internationally. It sold over 2.5 lakh copies in India, was something I certainly didn't expect. I didn't go out there thinking that this book is going to be a huge bestseller. That's what happened. And when that happened, it led to film offers. And it's been all very organic, Gaurav. One thing has led to the other. The writing process for me has remained unchanged because it remains a very solitary activity, something that you do on your own. Of course, films are far more collaborative because you may have another writer on, you may have a producer, director who wants to get more involved in the storytelling aspect. So it tends to be more collaborative. And now with web series, you have proper writing rooms that are set up. So that's changed. But essentially, the writing journey was something that was very organic. So I always say that it's who I am, not necessarily what I do. And there's a distinction there.
And I also thought that the point that you mentioned, that don't let go of your day job, and don't let go of what you do professionally when you are chasing your passion, because I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. And when it doesn't pay off for them, then what happens is that they tend to get kind of bitter, and then they almost start hating the choices that they made. So very, very important.
The thing is that in the creative field, in the writing field, there's a lot of rejection, right? So agents can reject you, producers can reject you, editors can reject you. So when you face that rejection, I still face it, let's be real. I still face it. And despite the success and the awards, et cetera, it's still a very much part of my life. So I always say that, have more than one have your don't have your eggs all in one basket. Have more than one basket. Be doing different things. If you're writing a web series, then write a novel at the same time. Do your column writing if you're in current affairs or politics or any of those things. Just have your eggs in different baskets so that you're not let down when you face rejection, because rejection is such an integral part of this process, of this line of work.
So almost like have multiple flows of income. So don't have all your eggs in one basket. Awesome. So some of the things to keep in mind when crafting and creating a great story.
Things to keep in mind. I feel for me, it's been very organic. It has on some level been linked to what I'm going through in my life. So, for example, Almost Single was at a stage in my life, when being single or being married were really preoccupations. You track that stuff, you pursued it, all of those things. When Kahani happened, Kahani was a direct consequence of 2611, because I come from a hotelier background, as you know, and there was these terrible attacks in which people I knew were caught up, people I knew died. I'm a hotelier by trade, in case your audience is wondering why I'm so connected to that. So it was very traumatic for me. And I felt an impotence that I think many people in India did at that point of time. It was also an attack which was being telecast live on TV. I remember it carried on for 3 days. I couldn't drink, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I was just, staring at the TV, switching channels and just crying. And that impotence kind of fueled Kahani, because I said, what if I know vigilantism isn't cool, and that's not the message here, but it came from a very honest place, in the sense that I felt that if one could have, at that point of time, picked up a gun and gone in there, one probably would have. And so that's where Kahani came from. So a lot of times, a big incident or a phase of life, it may trigger a story. And I think for writers, especially for me, writing is a way of reconciling my worlds, with my inner world. Does that make sense? So making sense of what's happening in the world around me and how I'm processing it as an individual, how I'm dealing with on an emotional level. Something that writing does for me. Of course, I fictionalize it and I stay true to entertaining people, for whatever that's worth. But I think for me, storytelling has always been a very personal journey. And there's a lot of me in the stories. It may be obvious or it may not be obvious, because, we live different lives in different ways and different times. So it's very intimate.
Yes, that's very interesting because when Almost Single did come out, the first thing that struck me is that is this semi autobiographical, right? Because it did seem like it had that theme. And then Kahani, I didn't know about that part. So thank you for sharing that. And yes, you did have a stint at the Oberoi's.
Yeah. So when I went to the Oberoi and Calcutta, and remember, it was quite a, Kolkata is a city which can really impact you. You have roots in Kolkata, so you probably, yeah. So were familiar with it. But when I went, I came back from the US, if you recall, and then I went straight to Kolkata. So it was so drastic for me, because for these 4 years, I had been immersed in this different world. And when you go to Kolkata, it literally slaps you in the face, right? It's not a city that you can be unmoved by, because the poverty, it stares back at you. The city kind of peeling and falling apart stares back at you. And yet there is the beauty of the culture and the food and the conversation and the intellectualism. So, it's a city that really moves you in very profound ways. So I think for me, Kolkata in Kahani became a character in the story, because again, it was a lonely time, and the city was animated in such a way that I almost was walking with the city, and and inhaling it and experiencing it in a very visceral way. And that's why I think Kolkata became a character.
Oh, it showed. And that is why the movie did remarkably well. And yes, when you were speaking right now, something came to my mind right now, and that is pertaining to writer's block and sometimes procrastination. Because when you do go so deep and know, your motivation and your drivers are so connected and so deep, doesn't that sometimes lead to writer's block? Just procrastinating on what you should be doing on future projects. So, your advice for people on actually overcoming that?
Oh my God, mine is not so much writer's block as it's procrastination. And maybe you can help me with that. You should do that for me about time because I have an idea a minute. While sitting here, I'll have an idea. I have like a hyperactive mind. So I'll have an idea a minute and then I'll want to do all of it. Right. So I'll be like, oh, I can do this and I can do that. And I can then work on this idea. And I'm actually at this point where I'm like, I don't know which one to start on.
Yeah.
And starting for me is really tough.
Right.
Yeah,
I completely relate.
Getting started is for me the tough part.
And I see this with a lot of people. What happens is that there are a lot of ideas, and what's very important is to actually capture them and, of course, start prioritizing and then, most importantly, go out there and act on them.
Mine is really more procrastination than writer's block because, sorry. I'm really excited about an idea, and a lot of writers will tell you this, that an idea writes itself in your head even before you get it down on paper. So in my mind, I'm always like trying to crack the story, even if I'm like sitting somewhere in a cafe or something. I may look like I'm doing nothing, but I may be like staring at something or just sitting there, but my mind is working, right? So that's one thing. And the challenge really is be able to get started, one. Secondly is to prioritize what to do first, and the immediacy of things, because all of these seem immediate. All of them are things that I want to do. And then I keep procrastinating, and time passes. And then I end up like saying, oh, I didn't really do any of them. And then by then I'm flooded with another slew of ideas. So this is for me the challenge. The challenge for me is not so much the writer's block, but it's prioritizing and getting things done because then I'm just in a whirl. I know this is supposed to be inspiring, but I'm probably sort of telling people that.
I think what you mentioned out there is very, very important. And this is what 95% of people are going through. There is some great thoughts, there are some great ideas, but they just don't know how to take it forward. And they struggle with execution and implementation. And thank you for putting it out there. I know sometimes people beat themselves up, but you needn't do that. It's human. It's actually human nature.
Are you going to give me classes or whatever, the pep talk and the leadership coaching and all of that too?
I'll do even better. I'll invite you to my event on the 27th of November, where we will be tackling exactly this point.
27th of November? My God, why don't you take another 3 months? Talk about procrastination. Where is it?
Yeah,
It's going to be at the Crown Plaza in Delhi. It's already pre-booked up, but would love to have you come in as well.
So in my mind, I'm thinking I've got till now the 27th of November to decide to do anything. See how it works?
Yeah, totally get that.
So tell me about your new avatar as a broadcaster and YouTuber, and the thoughts behind Kahali and what you're intending to do there.
Well, I've been coming on TV for like a decade plus now. I'm and I guess I'm now one of the senior commentators. And I've been doing it for a while. I've seen the decline in mainstream media dialogue and discussion and conversation. Now you kind of are worried that, oh God, is it going to get out of hand? Are people going to be screaming? Is anything going to come of it? Because so often nothing ever comes of it. And you sit for an hour and you get to speak for maybe 40 seconds, in the entire hour.
Yeah.
So you don't really get that much out of it. And I've also realized that a lot of people have tuned out of news TV. It's amazing. And this is just anecdotal, but it holds true for many people, is when initially when I used to come on TV, friends, family used to watch and, get back to me and give me feedback or, be engaged in the whole idea of, knowing someone who's coming on TV and being able to talk to them about issues. That's completely stopped. Like nobody cares at all. And I felt that I've been on this for quite a bit, where I feel that we must return to civility in public discourse. Unfortunately, that's been a huge casualty of our polarized politics and our polarized times. And I do a festival called Words Count, which basically, is the festival of words, because I think words do count. They do make a difference, how you say things, when you say them, who you say them to, can make the distinction between dialogue and really, going your separate ways and finding no common ground. So I used to do this festival. Of course, COVID, I've done 2 editions. COVID put the brakes on that. And then YouTube became a natural option. And what I did is I pick topics for discussion and I put a panel together, and the panel comes on. Like tonight, we'll be discussing the recent killings in Kashmir. And we really need to talk about that because I don't want to say it's alarming necessarily, but it's certainly of concern. And because teachers are being targeted, these are people who contribute to society, who are good human beings, who are any political agenda with in their world. So tonight we'll discuss that. So these are the kind of conversations I like to bring informed people on, people who know what they're talking about, and to discuss this in a reasonable, civil, in-depth manner, so that we can all come out of this, not necessarily with solutions. After all, we're just talking, but certainly shed some light and context to what in the world that we're living in right now. I think that's really important.
Agree 100%. And my dad's a big fan, and he's always watching your shows. So.
Oh, really? How nice. Does he want to come on it?
I'll ask him. Though
ask him.
Should be private like your parents. So I don't
I know. So, I think that generation is, right? I mean, they just don't like to be in front. My parents are like that as well. Yeah.
Sure.
So you have some great guests, always creating some great content on the YouTube channel. And as a fellow content creator, that isn't easy. So how do you keep the content engine running? Because that's something a lot of people struggle with, and that's why they end up stopping.
Well, it's really trial and error. So I had my YouTube page from last year, and I did it for a bit, and then I was like, nah, this isn't for me. I think there's a time for everything, And this June, I started working on it a little more seriously. And I mean, in the sense, became more regular on it, frankly. And I went from like 1,100 followers to now, I think about 23,000 something. Thank you. I mean, so I think it was consistency. It was being on there. It was, and the thing is, content for someone like me, because it's so topical, that's not really that hard. If there is a hot button topic, then we just pull it out and discuss it. But yes, the challenge is in curating the right panel who will actually provide different voices, different, I don't mean voices that are in conflict with each other, but perspectives on an issue. So that curation is very important, and to ensure that also to platform voices that we've not heard, because increasingly what happens on TV now is that regulars come on every topic. So it could be something to do with the law, it could be something to do with the automobile sector, it could be politics, it could be the economy, it could be science, and you have the same people coming and like pontificating on each of those subjects. Doesn't make any sense. Sorry. So what we try to do on this channel is to bring in area experts, to bring in people who have a point of view, who have a perspective, but not necessarily a platform. So that's always my hope to be able to do that. And I'm very flattered because I've been doing that consistently. And I think about 3 of my guests are now being pursued by mainstream media channels. And they're saying like, oh, we come on our show. So obviously like MSM watches the channel and then tries to poach my guests. But they won't get very far with that, I think, because, even guests like to come on shows where they can talk and where they're just not sitting in a box like a houseplant. But, they can actually, contribute to the conversation. And I think YouTube gives you that freedom. It gives you the opportunity. Like my guests, they speak for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, depending on what they have to say. Unlike on TV, that just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, again, that's exceptional. You went from 1,100 to 23,000, and I'm sure in a matter of months it'll be even 10x of that, and in due course, in the hundreds of thousands, because there truly is a dearth of great content out there and creating good stuff. So well done, and more power to you.
You should come also.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't know what you'd want to discuss though.
Yeah, so throw me some options sometimes, and we'll see what I can do. Because of course, there are a few things that I'm not too well versed in, politics being one of them. But yeah, we'll
no, but your viewers, whoever wants to come onto some of our panels, I do want to start like inviting viewers on as panelists so that we increase the interactiveness and the engagement with our viewers, because they're really loyal. I mean, my viewers are great. They're always like cussing me out about something, but they stay tuned in.
That as well.
Yeah, you saw that, right?
It's a good thing that you mentioned this, because how do you deal with haters and trollers? Because I mean, one time I was watching one of your episodes and people were just at you, like they were just coming at you, like in the comments. I'm like, oh my god! I mean, like what's happening there, right? So how do you deal with that? Are you like ignoring that altogether? Like, tell me about that.
Well, I mean, it just depends. Yeah, mostly I ignore it. I mean, you have to develop a thick skin, and now I've been in public life long enough to know when to engage and when to kind of say, okay, you're talking nonsense. I think I'm being trolled also today because some Karnataka minister said that being single and he was speaking on like World Mental Health Day and said the issue is women being single and not having children. So I kind of said that, come on, get off the stage, right? So the trads are on to me on Twitter, and now they're trolling me. And so, that's the world that we live in. And you can either let that define your experience, or you can say, okay, it's free speech. You have a right to say what you're saying, as long as it's not threatening and it's not hateful to communities or persons or inciting violence. Then I think I have no problem. If you want to cuss me out, go ahead. No problem. Yeah. I have the mic. You have the keyboard. Yeah.
Yeah, and even, I mean, you mentioned Twitter, and of course, you've got a fairly large following there, I think coming close to about 100,000 followers on Twitter, most likely all organic, and even the Prime Minister follows you, which is like so wow.
Yeah.
So how's Twitter been as a platform? Because that's another place which is very, I mean, it's not forgiving. I mean, it's one platform that I'm not on, because I've just seen how when something is posted, how people really come, at you.
Yeah, it's a swarm.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I use Twitter primarily for amplification. I don't necessarily do a lot of engaging on Twitter because I do agree with you. I think it's a bit of a I guess a mob mentality kind of rules there, and cancel culture is huge. So, I don't think it makes really sense to be opinionating on everything over there. It doesn't make a difference to anybody. Most people don't really care about your life. They just want something to outrage about that day. And if you give that to them, then it's a good day for them online. And one just has more to do than be on Twitter all the time. But I think it's an important space nonetheless. I think I certainly pick up a lot of the latest news and things like that from it, which wouldn't pop up in my world if I wasn't on Twitter, So it keeps me really updated on what's happening in the country, in the world. It gives me an opportunity to amplify. Like you said, I'm nearly going to be touching 100,000 soon if Twitter lets me, because they do all the shadow banning and all this dodgy stuff also, depending on which ideological end of the spectrum you fall on. So they're manipulative like that. But yeah, I feel use these apps for what they do for you. Don't necessarily define your life or your online experience by what goes down here, because it's an abyss. It can be. So don't be scared of it, but don't spend too much time on it either. And now there's studies, Gaurav. You have young kids. Soon they're going to be on the internet and all of that. Instagram, for example, is terrible. I read a study where it was terrible for the mental wellness of young girls, because it's all visual, it's all aspirational, and you've got to keep up. So each one of these platforms comes with their risks and challenges. And I think as a society, we have to know how to engage and disengage based on what our requirements are, because you cannot have these platforms determine your mental health. And unfortunately, they do that.
So true. Very true. I think key words again, know when to engage and disengage, because I see this, even when you mentioned Instagram, interestingly, even over there, and of course, a lot of stuff is being documented about what's happening to young girls and the eating disorders and all that.
Yeah.
But I mean, even look at our age group. When we talk about when people take those holidays, or when people are going out and buying those fancy things and putting them up there. Sometimes even amongst our friends and people of all ages, there's resentment. There is hard feelings. There is pressure. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and I think
frustration.
Engage.
Yeah, I mean, that's Facebook. Everybody's on a holiday all the time. Who works on Facebook? I don't think anybody works on Facebook. Everyone's on holiday. Okay, so Facebook for me is like the most dull platform, because I just think it's so fake. Everyone's happy. Everyone has great marriages, great children, great parents, everything. And and I think it's okay, because on some level it helps you connect with people that you're not in touch with. So I think that's great. But lately, I don't know if you saw that whistleblower's account. She came on 60 Minutes, ex-Facebook employee.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, last week. And she really spoke about how Facebook looks the other way and facilitates, this polarization and hate in society. So, there's a lot of money here. There's a lot of power here. There's a lot of diabolism. Okay, that's the underground level. And then it's the more obvious that, woohoo, look at me. I made it. So there's that. And I just find it dull. I just find it dull. Sure. Because you have to have a deep interest in other people's lives in that way, to find Facebook interesting. But again, the pages and all, you can certainly amplify content. And I use it as a content creator, essentially all of these platforms, be it Twitter, Facebook, even LinkedIn, to amplify content. And I think that would be a tip to, content creators is, yes, sure, there's going to be something like, for example, because I discuss politics and current affairs, I know that Twitter is more of a natural home for my content and its amplification than Instagram or Facebook are, because people are not really discussing politics and things like that to that extent on these platforms. Sure. But on Twitter, if you look at the trends, etc., and the conversations, it's usually about politics. So as a content creator, figure out, what's your niche? Are you a baker? Right. Do you bake? Right. Then I would say be on Instagram. Right. Do a little bit of food porn, put your content out there primarily and focus on Instagram. Because, otherwise you can hire a team if you have the resources to do that. But if you're doing it yourself, then focus on one platform that really kind of works and fits into your brand and the content that you're sort of providing.
Valuable advice. Focus on your one platform, blow it up there, and then perhaps
don't get too scattered.
As well.
Yeah, because you need conversion also, right? So if I am on Facebook and I see, the engagement on my content in Facebook is very limited because it's current affairs and politics and people are not really that into it. But the engagement on my Twitter is much higher because that's the platform where people who are interested in these topics come.
Sure. Yeah, completely agree. So, of course, this podcast is called the Smashed Bashed, Yet Not Dashed podcast. And just to touch upon, and I know you've had some smash bashed moments in your life. So any that
consistently. consistently.
So anything that really, stood out for you or something that you'd be comfortable sharing? Because I'd love to know what those were. And then also, how perhaps you overcame that. But let's just go back first into, one of those smash bash moments, that at the time just seemed to be very, very hurtful, tough to overcome.
Oh my God, so many, so many. I don't know which one to pick. Can you help me? Which one do you think?
I don't know. I mean, like I said,
you've
go back
seen
a
all
long time, but there have been a few.
Yeah, they
But I'm
have.
just wondering, I mean, something that when you think about, it just you at that point you thought that, I mean, will I ever get over
Oh, yeah.
this?
Okay. Yeah. I got it. Okay. So I told you all I was a hotelier and I was doing well for myself. I was working with the Oberoi, which I think is the finest hotel company in the country. And I quit and I went to Dubai to work at with Jumeirah. And I was very excited because I said, this is an opportunity for me to, and this was in my late 20s. So this was an opportunity for me to get international exposure. And for a hotelier, international exposure is important. At that point of time, Dubai was actually bursting out and becoming a global city, like it already was. But this is pre-Burj Khalifa and all of that. So it was really coming into its own. And it was a really exciting time to be there. So I went there. And it just didn't work out. It was the worst decision professionally. Also, in terms of fitting into that culture and all of that was just not a go for me. So after about 6-7 months, I quit and returned to India. And I was extremely depressed at that point of time because I felt like, I was with the Oberoi in Bangalore. I had great friends, great city, great life, doing well professionally. And I mean, I just kind of willed this on myself by taking this step and moving abroad. And because it had only been 6 or 7 months, I couldn't even apply back to the Oberoi because, what do you say? I mean, it's not something that you can, bounce out of a job and then come back. And I felt really low about it at that point of time. And I remember my parents were relocating. They were moving from Mumbai back to Delhi. And it was about a 3-month thing. And said, just take your time, figure out what you want to do with your life. And that's okay. People can have moments in their life when they need to recalibrate and reevaluate where they're heading and all of that. So I said, sure. So I was essentially hanging around at home. I remember I used to, my only outing was really walking my dog. You all were in Delhi. And my friends from the Oberoi were, of course, posted in different cities and busy at work. So it was a very lonely time. And then one evening my mom said, you've always liked writing. Why don't you try writing a book? And I said, I'm not sure if that's really something I can do. I'd never done it before. I've written for myself, but I've never ever done anything before. So I said, let me think about it. And then the next morning, I woke up and for some reason, I started writing. In fact, I must say, my whole family, my cousins, all of us decided to walk to Siddhivinayak barefoot. All right. So there's a slightly heavenly intervention here. And when we reached Siddhivinayak, it wasn't far. I mean, it was, it's done in Bombay. People do that. It's very common. So when I reached there, I just kind of went to him and said, please, give me a pathway, give me some sort of direction. Not really expecting any answers, but it's just something I did.
Yeah.
And I came back, and then the next morning I woke up 5:36 and I started writing, Gaurav, and I kept writing, and that turned out to be Almost Single. So if I had not quit that job and had this crisis in my life in my late 20s, I would not have been published even before I was 30 and sold 2.5 lakh copies. And let me just say, I mean, quit my job is a polite way of saying it. They basically created a situation for me in that workplace where, sometimes people do that, like where you can't continue. And it's a horrible situation to be in, but it happened. And so I quit because I had to, and it was a horrible time, but look what it opened up for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think that so fits in with the theme where we say, smashed, bashed, yet not dashed. Because truly, I mean, you decided that there was something to do and your bounce back was stronger than ever. And like I said, we go back many, many years now. There have been many instances. We wouldn't want to get into too many of them. But probably one day when you do write your book, there'll be a lot of
I just hope you don't.
references.
I just hope you don't give interviews about me. That's it. I should get you to sign a contract now.
Of course.
Say that. And an non-disclosure agreement and NDA. You can't answer any questions about me.
Yeah, we should do that because I have a lot of dope on Advaita Kala.
I know. And ditto, vice versa. Although I think you've been relatively boring, but I can squirrel something out.
100%. So, yeah. So,
Compared to Nick. Me, yeah, you were always like the stable one, right? I mean, you always let me talk to your viewers about you. Now we've talked enough about me. So Gaurav was always had a plan, right? Always had a plan. He was constantly thinking and talking about things that when you're 16, 17, you're really not interested in. And these were things like, I think, Warren Buffett and the great next big idea and all these entrepreneurial things. And you're like, no, man, I don't want to talk about this. And they were, and I remember that time around WWF was huge, right? So Gaurav goes and makes WWF cards, playing cards. And it became the rage. Like people wanted to buy them, exchange them, all of these things. I mean, it still doesn't make sense to me. It does not make sense to me why people were even interested in that, but it worked. And he was making board games in school. Then post school and college, when the bubonic plague hit, Nikhil, I think that was Nikhil's first fashion designing moment, was made that vulgar t-shirt that said, "I survived the bubonic plague." And I think there was a rat and blood splattered on the t-shirt. I mean, I got a t-shirt for free from it, but I never wore it. It was horrible. So I think Gaurav was always entrepreneurial. I talk about me having like 10 ideas, but they were in my head and they're story ideas. But Gaurav always had like multiple like business ideas, like, this will work. And we used to tease him that, oh, you're obsessed with money. But it's a different phase of life, right? Now you realize, now that I've seen how he's grown and built his own business all on his own, like just perseverance and years and years and years and years. Like, I mean, I teased him about not going to college, but he was working even through college. I mean, he may have been available for a matinee show, but he was working. There was supplements, right? That time it was gym supplements.
Yeah, Aman and I were
Aman Bhanda, Aman and you.
Yeah.
So he was working the whole time. He may not have been going to college, but he was at it. So I think that has, to me, I think my biggest learning from you has been how you've been consistent and persistent, very hardworking. That goes without saying. And your ability and your openness to reinvent yourself. And I think that applies to all of us, be it Nikhil, you, me. We keep adding stuff, So in my case, I wrote the book, I wrote the film, now I'm doing YouTube. In your case, I know how many businesses, right? And now you're doing your latest, which is, mentorship and leadership coaching and things like that. Same with Nikhil, I mean, clothes, men, women, film, home styling. I mean, so I think the lessons, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we learned these things from each other or we just had them. I'm not being self-congratulatory here, but really just being practical and, trying to make sense of it is the fact that we were always willing to chances and take risks and not be afraid of failing and having fun. I think that's a big one, is just to be able to, do these different things and have fun doing them.
And thank you for sharing some of those things, and of course, bring back fond memories. And completely agree. Like even today, I mean, I run multiple companies, and then it's still the gifting piece is still there. We're back into board games. We're doing, of course, the podcast. The GBA is doing great. There's a lot of things happening at VNI, etc. But I think fun is a very important element.
Yeah.
And I see the same with Nikhil as well. And of course, we still catch up a lot. We do a lot of golf together. Nikhil was on the podcast as well. And
I saw that.
You guys all feature in the book as well, right? So my book's now with the publishers, and we have the book with the name.
Publisher? I didn't know this. You didn't tell me.
So it's Success Resources, based on Singapore, and Success Gyan, which is their Indian counterpart. So they're the guys who are going to be doing the Smashed, Bashed, Yet Not Dashed book. And,
lovely.
So that's going to have a lot of stories from growing up and all of that. So interesting. And Nikhil's there, and you're there.
I'm there. Have you been nice about me?
Of course.
Of course.
So look out.
And when is it coming out?
Hopefully before the event in November, so I'll be pushing them accordingly. So 27th November, hopefully.
Oh, great! Then we should do like an interview on my channel.
Yeah, look forward to that one.
In fact, when you stream these, you can also stream them on my channel if you want.
Yeah,
you know,
love to do that.
You can do some cross streaming, so you get an audience, different audience. So
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean, super shares, and we'll go on for another 15 to 20 minutes. Have some other interesting questions for you as well, Advaita. So you're involved in a lot of social initiatives. Project Bully during the pandemic was an example of that. And talk us through some of those initiatives and your plans over there as well. You've always been very generous and someone who's always giving back to society and trying to help in times of crisis. So, social initiatives, and let's have some of your thoughts on those and what's going on for you there as well.
Well, last year, because, my sister lives in New York, right? So I was tracking this pandemic and it hit New York and all much before it hit us in that bad way. I knew exactly what these cities were going through. And when Prime Minister Modi said that we're heading into a lockdown, to me, it was very obvious that the people who would suffer the most were not people like us, who, had fully stocked kitchens and, had something in the bank and comfortable homes to live in. It was going to be the poor, the migrant laborers and people like that. So a bunch of friends and I in Gurgaon, we set up Janta Rasoi. And it was a community kitchen that we served meals to. So we did fundraising. We had a kitchen, 2 kitchens by the end of it, wherein we made food for about 2,000 to 4,000 people a day, depending on what the requirement was, and then went out and distributed. So we did that for about 8-9 months. We did ration kits, we did food. So that worked well. And we fed, of course, thousands of people. And then this year, in the early part of the year, there was a conversation about COVID moving to the villages of India in this wave. And I'm from Uttarakhand, as you know, Uttarakhand and UP, but Uttarakhand is, of course, has far more developmental needs. So my fear was that there are such remote villages in the Himalayas where you cannot even, get there by car or anything. You have to walk for 15-20 kilometers to get there. When people are sick, they have to be carried out in charpais and lugged physically across kilometers to get to even medical help. And that doesn't get them to medical help, by the way. That gets them to a road. And then when you get on that road, then you find some sort of vehicular transport that will take you to medical help. So it's a horrible, horrible circumstance to be in if you are in a health crisis. So Project Bully, my friend from school, Divya Bindra Kapoor, and we got together. She's from Wellams. She's a Wellamite. And we got on board. We were supported very generously by Abhinav Bindra, the Olympian. And his foundation supported our initiative. And we created care packages for remote hill villages. So we sent in pulse thermometers, ivermectin, medicinal packets for children also, syrups and things because kids don't have, pills, steamers, vaporers. I'm not necessarily a COVID defense, but definitely with the winter coming, it's very good with congestion and the cold and all of that. So we did all of these things and we sent them out, rations, all of it. And we did this in about 3 phases and we covered about 15 villages. And then things settled down a little bit. So now we're sort of on hold for a bit and we're just waiting and watching like a lot of people are with COVID to see what next, how can we come in? Who knows? I mean, it may be, we do have a little money from what we've raised. And we could then sponsor education because there are a lot of COVID orphans also now, by the way. So we just didn't, and when we went out to the villages and things like that, we got a sense that even the government was reaching. Nice. That was pleasant. So, that meant that we could even step back from this. And the rain started in Uttarakhand, which meant it became very difficult to reach certain places. So we did these 15 villages, then we stopped. Now we're going to wait and watch and see what the aftermath is and whether we want to direct those funds to scholarships or something else, or help women, widows, maybe set up self-help groups. So these are things that I keep doing. I mean, that's just I think if God gives you a platform and gives you a voice and a certain amount of credibility, then it's almost incumbent on you to use that to help other people. It's a karmic thing.
Okay. Very deep share.
Mhm.
Thank you for that one as well.
So, of course, you mentioned women and women empowerment. You've always been very independent. So, thoughts on what's changing for women on the whole in India and your outlook for women in general in the years ahead?
Well, I mean, two steps forward, two steps back, right? I think it continues to be a battle. I think it continues to be a struggle. In fact, earlier today, I spoke to a university in Bhopal about success and women, and it was in Hindi. It was something that I delivered in Hindi, and I told them, I said, you have to make a distinction between pragati and safalta, which is progress and success. You have to be able to realize that the two are not the same thing. So you may find or seek success in say being a housewife, and being a householder, and taking care of your family, raising your kids, all of those things, and contribute say citizens to society who know how to treat other people, boys who know how to treat girls, who contribute, who are good citizens, and that will lead to progress. So, don't define success by the male definitions or by definitions of society. You may prefer to be in a career, for example, and that may be your priority. And that's for you is success. You're maybe as a woman, you're opening doors to other women in a field where there aren't so many women. And that leads to progress. So my thing is that very often we think success equals progress, which means that, if you're in a high-powered job or if you're in the public eye, then you're successful and you're progressive and no, I think even if you do small things in life, or what we consider small because our definitions of success are so flashy and so Wall Street, doesn't mean that you're necessarily contributing to progress. You could be successful for yourself. You could be buying your jets and living your lifestyle and going on your holidays and indulging yourself, and you're successful for yourself. But are you contributing to progress? Not really. So I think we need to kind of redefine success as women and as individuals. This is not even a gender thing, but as individuals, we need to redefine success and see if that works towards progress of society, of the country. These I think are very important things. And I certainly view my own success in those terms. If I have success, it's not necessarily because I can afford something or because 5 people recognize me or my name. No, it's because am I able to take that success and make it a contributing factor in the progress of this nation, of my country?
I think you're definitely on a good path there because you are helping out in amazing ways, basis all the things that you've been doing as well. So, what are the next few years actually looking like, for you? Have you actually thought, that far into the
No, see,
future? Not really.
Gaurav, I'm not you. If someone asked you, what are the next 20 years looking like, you can tell them. I'm not you. I've never been you. I don't think I can start now. I have no idea.
All right.
But maybe you can help me plan.
Of course. So we'll line up a chat, not on the 27th November, before that we get together for lunch and have a conversation around
All
that
right.
as well.
Sounds
Sure,
good. Sounds good.
So, like I said, this is of course the Smash Bashed, Get No Dash podcast, and a lot of people. This is maybe concluding a couple of questions. A lot of people have in the past, not only the past 18 months, but even prior to that, they've had their Smash Bash moments. As have you. What would be your advice, to them in particular, in terms of overcoming this, and your advice to them?
I feel that sometimes we push ourselves to work in situations and with people who we're not comfortable with at an organic level, because we think that that's the right thing to do for our careers or for our progress in a particular field. My learning in the last couple of years has been that please work with people that you trust, that are in line with your value system, in life, and can be an enriching experience. Because, see, we're not just about the work. You're just not about hitting the bottom line or making the money. You're about the process and you're giving your time. I mean, there's nothing more important than your time, your mind space to certain people, to certain situations, to certain work areas. So you have to make sure that the people that you're investing your time in, that's far more valuable than your money, are worth it and are going to add value to your life. So I think choose who you work with carefully, just like you would choose who you marry, etc., etc. I think that's something that I've learned that is very important. And then you may not be smashed that often. You may get dashed sometimes, but certainly not smashed or bashed.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, be mindful of who you're spending time with, and of course,
Yeah,
coming to time.
yeah, and people who lift you up. There are a lot of situations in life when you progress or you do better, then people who were from a certain stage in your life don't necessarily want to walk with you for their own reasons, because they may feel that they're being left behind or your world is changing. And then there's also human emotions of resentment, envy, all of those things. And then there are going to be those people who are thrilled for you, and I think you need to choose the ones who are going to bring positive energy into your life and positive vibes. And just you need to move on as you evolve doesn't mean a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I think it's a very natural thing.
So couldn't agree more. And be mindful about who you're spending your time with. And one of my team members actually had an interesting question for you, and this pertains to getting credit for what is rightfully yours. And of course, they're big fans of yours. Young girls in the office as well, and big fans when it comes to the books and the movies. And they want to know about how writers in particular are sometimes not given their due, especially in cinema. They aren't paid the best, and rarely will you see their names in the movie posters. And even when the movie has been a blockbuster, rarely do you hear about the writers. So, your thoughts on that in particular?
Yeah, Gaurav, I told you that I love to be home and I'm an introvert and all of those things. I think you see those aspects of me. Although I mean I'm very comfortable with all of you, so it's probably not the primary characteristic you see, but out in the larger world. So for me, I have had these experiences when I've been denied credit, when I've been bullied out of my contribution and all of those things. And I realized that the only way to stand up to this is to get stronger, which meant developing more of a public profile, which meant being out there a lot more so that you don't just remain a name, but you become a person, who stands for something and who will be heard when things are done wrong, when you're wronged. Because when these things happened to me, I was not in a position to fight back because they had the money, they had the contacts, they had everything. I was just one individual. I didn't have the profile. I didn't have any of those things. So I realized at that point in my career that I have to really step up. And, I used to hate going on TV. I used to will myself to go on TV because I was just say that, no, I mean, if I have to be strong and if I have to be taken seriously, I have to build a profile because the world is cruel, and I'm very happy that today, because I'm able to do that, I'm able to help other writers. When they're denied credit and things like that, some of them come to me and they say like, can you make us think about this or can you support us on this? And I do it. Because they're so used to us being background workers that, I mean, that nobody will care. No media will want to pay attention to any time that we've been wronged. So they can get away with anything. So, I think my advice to anyone who finds themselves in these situations is step into your own power, to recognize your own power and step into it. Because we all have that within us. We just choose to let it lie latent or to ignore it or not use it. I decided to fan that flame and to say that I'm going to step into my power. I may not be the most powerful person in the world, but I will have a voice when something goes wrong. And that to me was very important.
Super. That was the ultimate. more people really need to reach out to you and have greater access to you. So where, Advaita, can listeners and viewers actually find you and the great content that you're actually putting out there?
On Twitter at Advaita Kala, and on YouTube, I'm at youtube.com/Advaita Kala now. You can catch the content on there. You can drop us a message there, and either I will or my team will engage with you, get back to you. And yeah, the world is a smaller place now.
So true, so true. So I just want to conclude by saying thank you, Advaita. You are one of the smartest people I know. And you know far.
Doesn't say much for the people you know, Gaurav.
So I know one thing for sure, that you are going to go far. As a broadcaster, as someone who's a champion for women's rights, and more. And maybe some days, who knows, maybe even go far in politics as well and make things great happen.
I'm happy being a commentator, but thanks. Be careful what you wish for, Gaurav. I may use my power on you then to persecute you.
Well, hopefully you shouldn't have need to do that. But I appreciate it. And like I said, great to have you here.
Thank you.
Regards to your parents, they are two of my favorite people in the world as well. And always been very,
and we love you, and we're so proud of all that you're doing, and your little empire that you've built, which I'm looking forward to seeing you on some lists soon.
Yeah. Someday.
Soon.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Advaita. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Ladies and gentlemen, Advaita Kala, follow her, check out her YouTube channel. She's there every Sunday on the Sunday shows, and then she's doing shows all the time. It's not meaningless, noise. It truly is amazing stuff. My dad is very judicious on where he spends his time, and he loves Advaita sessions as well, as do many others. So definitely do follow Advaita. And Advaita, thank you once again for being on the Smash Bash Get On Dash podcast, and look forward to having you on again in the future on one of our forums. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.